Are they? We sat by the rivers of the River Jordan. If we sat by the rivers, we sat by the River Jordan and we wept when we remembered Zion. This world is a horrible place, and humans are horrible, but we'll come to that much later. I've been working on this esoteric symbol for many years, and I started working on it when I was 20, I think, and now I'm 60, so it either shows you how slow I am or how slow the process is, or both. But anyway, this world. Within this world, you have the hypocrisy of the higher mind, that which consciously connects us to spirit, hypocrisy, and the savagery of the lower mind, that which connects us to earth. So, earth is a place where action and reaction occur in a jolly old dance together. Um, and you just can't help but be distracted in a reaction, in a reactive mind. And with sort of about up top this is the impotence and the hypocrisy of the higher mind, the good that we would, but we do not, sort of thing. Represented by the sign for air. This is the top sign for air, and this is a sign for earth. Um, and in between these polarities, I suppose, is this sign, which I think is a Greek alphabetical symbol, actually. I've completely forgotten what it is. Isn't it strange? No, it doesn't really matter. Because that which lies between them, and it seems like soul lies between these two fools, really. The fool of the higher mind and the fool of the lower mind. And the foolishness, perhaps, of creating these two categories. But that's just a bit of sophism, really. You know what I mean about the savagery of the lower mind and the hypocrisy of the higher mind. I mean, I have it myself, don't I, really? I mean, I make these videos on one hand for a network that I hate, namely YouTube. And I sort of pontificate about these sort of esoteric and metaphysical truths. Um, and But then I have to live under the Soviet oppression of YouTube and their community guidelines, whatever they are. Who knows and who cares? But I become savagely angry with YouTube, such as I want to go around to their headquarters in London and blow them up. I want to do that, but I'm not going to, obviously. But it wouldn't take much for me to do it, I suppose. Perhaps I'll do it when I'm really old and grey, and then it won't matter being in prison for the rest of my life because I won't have much of my life to go. Yeah, and it's a good way to go out, isn't it? Really, on a note of notoriety rather than being famous, you're notorious. It's all the same as far as the media is concerned. After all, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they have brought the two polarities together, haven't they? Notoriety uh, and uh, and and being famous on the other, being a celeb. You can be a celeb, for the baddies or the goodies. It doesn't really matter, so long as you sell them their newspapers, of course. But the key to this all basically is that soul, which is made of two parts, which I'll come to in a minute, that which separates and is separated. So it's basically we live in this prison reality, prison ship, uh, this world. And it's a brutal place, and we are slowly being brutalized by it in various different ways. Some people brutalize more than others, it's true, it's a relative situation, but all brutalized in some way or another. And so that's a sort of one of those components there dealt with. Um, but Jiva, of course, is connects us to the lower mind, the instincts, the earth, because Jiva is just a blind force. It's just the life force, the Reiki, if you like, and it depends on whatever you do, whether it's murdering somebody or helping somebody across the road who's disabled. The Jiva puts all of its energy into that moment, into that project, into today's project, which is either murder or being nice. Um, and this video is coming out all wrong as well because you know I mean I've got my vicious temper, which is pretty much uncontrollable on occasions, which is only controlled by pharmaceutical industry chemicals. Otherwise, I'd just go out and kill everybody, I think, really, and not really worry about it too much. And why would I? Why bother being ethical in an unethical world? But of course, we do have soul, which is Atman, and we do connect to the spirit via Atman, which is a sort of it's kind of, if Jiva is the life force that connects us to earth, and Atman connects us to spirit, and that's a kind of a sort of a wise, creative, ethical element within our consciousness. But it's the consciousness, it's the ethics. Because if you take away all the necessity for losing one's temper, for example, then you would never lose your temper, would you? Well, you wouldn't have a temper to lose in the transcendental realm, which is where we're headed after we've but it's just up to us. We mustn't become brutalized by the prison that we're in, because one day we're going to be released from it, um, through the redemptive power of the Christ and the Holy Spirit working in this world, making life a tiny, tiny little bit bearable for you and for me and for other people that we don't know, that we are connected to in terms of ethics. So we are connected to the transcendental through ethics, and through the regard for other people, even if they don't have any regard for us. We must have regard for them. So you don't retaliate. You're a pacifist. All true Christians should be pacifists. They really should, and they were in the early church. And and you'll say, well, what happens when people come along and burn your church down and persecute you? What happens when you get people being mean to you, just on the basis of your religion? Surely you're entitled to fight back, aren't you? To defend yourself. No, you're not entitled to it, even though you'll probably end up doing it. You're not entitled to do it. You just end up doing it and you put all your energy into doing it, because you're connected to the savagery of the lower mind. So you'll end up becoming a non-pacifist, no matter how good your intentions are. And that's what this world is about. It's about however good your intentions are, this world will destroy them, by hook or by crook, by hook and by crook. The two symbols of authority of this world over us, hook and crook. And YouTube has a hook. It says, we're the biggest network. You've got to go through us in order to get the biggest reach to people. That's the hook. And you like making videos because of your ego, and you like making them, every weekend, and you like people praising you and all this. That's the hook. And the crook is that you can't say certain words and certain things, because of our community guidelines, and that's the crook. That's the hook. Hook and the crook. Although probably the crook is the other way around, because the crook and the hook is a sort of side, isn't it? So, it's punishment on one end, and reward on the other, and the system of rewards and punishments is how you modify behavior. So YouTube can modify my behavior, by a scheme of rewards and punishments. But the rewards actually just really just about my ego, and the punishments about their ego and their fear. Because they're frightened of what people might think of YouTube if they just put all the videos up that they wanted to put up and people just had freedom. They wouldn't be allowed to be free, you see. So it's no good blowing up YouTube headquarters in London because it's not their fault. They are in fear of a bigger whip that's going to whip them if they want to adhere to freedom, but they're not allowed to. You see. So they have to have these community guidelines, or possibly they will be taken down. Do you know what I mean? So we're all bound together in this. We're in this trap. We're all trapped together, fighting each other like drowning rats, desperate to survive by any means. And I'll come on to this in another video, really. But I just thought I'd let this go or let this fly, and you feel the hypocrite, because with a higher mind and the lower mind, the hypocrisy of the higher mind, and the savagery of the lower mind. No wonder we sit by the banks on the banks of the Jordan and weep when we think of Zion, because Zion is where we've come from, the transcendental, and this, well, wherever we ancient Egypt or ancient Assyria or ancient Babylon, wherever we've been, these are symbols of our captivity as soul. But soul is having to mediate between the good that the human would and does not, and the bad that the human would not but does, and the soul is stuck between these between two crosses, and it reminds me of the three crosses on Calvary, doesn't it? Because the two crosses are the two thieves, one of whom repents, and then the central cross is the cross of Christ, and that sort of represents soul having to mediate between a thief that doesn't repent on one hand and a thief that does on the other. And Jesus says to him, I will see you in heaven this day because you've repented. So I suppose that the higher mind actually knows what repentance is and seeks it through "I love you, God," the four holy words, which come under the emotion or water, and which is great, and the other thief will not repent, and that represents fire, the fire of this world, which will go out eventually. As this world implodes and eats its own tail. So, so you've got fire, earth, air, water represented here, balanced. Fire is a jiva that puts it puts its elbow grease behind everything, good or bad. It doesn't care. It just does things. Does whatever. Is kind, is cruel. Jiva doesn't care which it is. It just does it. And that's the soul that can't be harmed and cannot harm, to put it in Bhagavad Gita terms. But the Atman seeks a higher ethic, which is beyond even the hypocrisy of the intellect, and certainly the savagery of earth. It seeks spirit. And I think in the original symbol that I had when I was young, had actually the symbol of spirit here, which is a cross surrounded by a circle. But I put it in a different way this time because I wanted to show that the Jiva Atman is stuck in the middle of intellect, the good that we would, the higher mind, and the lower mind, which is the instinctual part of mind, the part that just gets furiously angry with people that piss us off. Um, and um, and that's all basically how it is. This is this world, basically. This is the structure in which we find ourselves in. And I suppose basically, you have to like just as the people in the Soviet Union in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they had to live with the Soviets, had to try and make the best of life. We have to make the best of life within the constraints of YouTube, and do what we can, and try not to offend their community guidelines too much. But because also it's just a machine as well. YouTube is a machine. It's just got AI and it's got filters and bots and spiders and things like that, and it just it's all automatic. So it just it throws you out of the network on an automatic system. There's no human being behind it. There's no justice behind it. It's just a machine. And in a sense, that's what we're coming nowadays. Actually, if I may criticize world, the modern world, is that we're becoming mechanized more and more and more, and taken over by mechanized. And the trouble with machines is that they have no sense of justice. They have no sense of balance. They don't have an advocate for the defense. You just infringe rules, and they just deal with you. A bit like the Soviets had their rules, and if you didn't follow them, you were dealt with, summarily dealt with, and that's like in a military situation and stuff. And you think about how militaristic our society is becoming in the West. We're becoming as bad as they are everywhere in the world, really, with militarism has sway. Because militarism is so efficient. It's not kind, it's not ethical, but it's very efficient. It gets the job done. Do you know what I mean? So in that sense, you've got to sort of admire it, really. They get the job done, and Google spy on you. They get the job done. It's not ethical. It's not kind. It's not nice. It's not just. But it does. It keeps people off their back. That's all they're worried about, is not getting into trouble themselves. So when I think about this, when the higher mind steps in, I don't become so savagely angry with YouTube anymore, because I do sort of understand what's going on with YouTube. Perhaps I understand more what's going on with YouTube than the people that created YouTube, actually, that are just nerds and people just trying to escape prosecution themselves. So, but so much for freedom, so much for democracy. These things they exist in the higher mind, but in the earth, democracy doesn't exist. Never will. It's the guy with the biggest stick. That's the morality, and that's the savage world. That's the lower minds. But going back to the original thing about when I started clumsily off about talking about, we wept when we think of Zion, when in captivity. I just think to myself, in a sense, soul is weeping. Atman is weeping for the transcendental realm. And I suppose the higher mind has no trouble in listening to that weeping voice, weeping soul. I suppose the trick is to try and educate the lower mind to hear that crying as well. Whether it's possible to educate the lower mind into becoming more ethical, I don't know, because probably by definition, the lower mind it isn't concerned with ethics, just with survival and power and profit and pride. So I'm not really quite sure if that's a redeemable part of the human at all. And this is where Gnostic Christians differ from Christians, because Christians think that part is redeemable somehow. And Gnostic Christians don't think that part is redeemable. That part is left behind and will be left behind at the end of days. But of course, so will the intellect, so will the hypocrisy of the higher mind be left behind at the end of days as well. That will be destroyed by the fire. The fact that you can think noble thoughts won't save you. You have to live noble thoughts. You have to be noble thoughts. You have to be the higher mind, and once we can't in this world, we can't be that mind. You see, we can't fully be the savage mind either, because otherwise we'd just be animals rather than humans. Although lots of animals have a higher sense of ethics than we do, but maybe not. You see, I also want to include the story of my dog, Fen, a beautiful Alsatian German Shepherd. And he's a lovely dog. He's incredibly intelligent. His vocabulary is wide. He's got a loving heart. He's beautiful. He's really loving towards towards his owners. He's loving and gentle, and he'd be lovely with children. He's a beautiful dog, and he's a lovely dog. And this beautiful dog, very intelligent, very high vocabulary, did something which we'll almost not talk about. He killed a sheep. He ran after it and killed it, and ripped its insides out and all this, which is horrific. But it's my fault because I lost control of him. Well, he got out, and there's sheep around about the house, and the inevitable happened. But it's instinct. He just succumbed to the instinct to kill, because he's a dog, and but then many people, many humans, succumb to the instinct to kill, on pretty much less of a provocation. Just because somebody is a Jew or black or gay, they go and kill that person. They're not even a sheep. They're not even sort of food prey. They're just ideological prey or something. So when you think about that, so that's kind of what I mean about this situation, really. And I do believe that my dog has a soul. And I don't know, the soul wasn't there on that day that the sheep was killed. And the soul is only partly there, or thought about, when he's being loving and intelligent. When we are being loving and intelligent, the soul is partly there. And when we're being savage, the soul is nowhere there. So, where does this leave us? What conclusion can I come to, really? I don't know. How can there be a conclusion to this situation, except total destruction? The end of the world has to come, because there is no conclusion. How can you resolve the higher mind or the lower mind? How can you live in this world without power, pride, and profit? How can you live in this world without watching your back, at the expense of other people, and living not by principle, but by pragmatism? And I've even discussed, the five angels of A that help you to be pragmatic whilst being ethical, or trying to be ethical. But you're going to slip up, because this world is one huge banana skin, ultimately, isn't it? And the bank's always going to win, and you're always going to fail. So there's no redemption in this world. There can't possibly be, and there is none. And maybe they're little specks, little spots, little flecks of redemption within this world, or little flecks of goodness, that come up. And sometimes there's great altruism and great ethics and great principle shown. But mostly there isn't. 95% there isn't. And because of that, eventually the soul is going to go, Atman is going to go that way. And Jiva's probably going to go with it. And the higher mind, perhaps some of the higher mind will go with it. And the memory of the lower mind will go with it as well. And the lower mind will have to be forgiven by a forgiving God. And the higher mind will be, I suppose, uh, will be what was the word? Justified, on the other hand, and all will be resolved in the transcendental world. So I suppose the hope is there, and the faith is there, and the charity is there, charity means love for God. So the word is agape, but in meaning. So that's all we've got to look forward to, really. But in the meantime, I'm I'm probably going to succumb to the lower mind, much and often, and and I do care about that, actually, but I just can't help it. I just got a vile temper, and a vicious temper, and I vengeance and war and vengeance and fire and brimstone are part of who I am, basically, in quite an extreme form. So, And I know my magic as well, so I would use magic as well against people that I really hated. But the point is not to hate people that much, to use magic against them really. It's not that magic is unethical. It's just the use of it to destroy someone's life is unethical. And without ethics, we are just of the earth. And without ethics as a sort of energy, we are just hypocrites. Hmm. I'm not sure if any of this has made any sense whatsoever. But there you go.